Portland has now came out. Let me make sure I don't paraphrase this in any way. Let me just go ahead and say it. According to Brian Windhorst, the Blazers want the Heat to empty out all their assets for Damian Lillard. They want the Heat to literally scrounge into every nook and cranny and produce everything they possibly can. The Heat don't feel like they need to do that. Just your quick thoughts here before I go in.
The Heat don't feel like they have to do that. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the Portland Trailblazers are the team with Damian Lillard. If the Heat want Damian Lillard, they might have to. Listen, I get it. Damian Lillard is being a little, cryptic with his posts on Instagram and stuff like that. Resharing things on his story, then deleting them, talking about being on the Heat and stuff like that, and making all these references here and there. But at the end of the day, he is a Portland Trailblazer, and we talked about this. He's either going to go into training camp with Portland or he's going to go to Miami. Portland doesn't have to do shit. Sure, they can make him happy. They could, do this and that to accommodate him, for his services and stuff like that. They don't have to. They could keep him on there. He's signed a contract for, another 3-4 years, has to fulfill that contract. And Damian Lillard, we talked about this, isn't going to be a guy that I think will sit out at training camp or anything like that, or like hold out or anything with the Blazers. From the Heat perspective, listen, I understand. They're asking for a lot for a 33-year-old. I understand that. But Damian Lillard is a one of a kind, a very special talent. And if you get him by just giving up guys like Tyler Hero, we have Nikola Jovic, what's his name?
Jaquez.
Yes, Jaquez Jr. You have to give up some role players and guys like that. I know Tyler Hero maybe a little bit more than the role player, but you're giving up those guys and picks for Damian Lillard. You're immediately a favorite to win the NBA championship, and there's no question about that. You got a big three of Lillard, Butler, and Bam. Boom. There you go. That's a team that has made it to the finals 3 of the last 4 years, and have made it very far in the postseason for the last 4 years. Them and the Celtics have met up the last 3 of the last 4 years in the postseason. Damian Lillard immediately legitimizes your team and makes people think, oh shit, okay, this is the favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference. You're looking at giving up picks for, the next, 4 or 5 years. I get it. But it's about winning championships. And if that's what you got to do to win a championship, I think the Heat have to bite the bullet. Maybe they give up 1 or 2 less picks than the Blazers want. Maybe instead of, giving it up, you do some swaps, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, I think the Heat have to bite the bullet, and they have to do what they got to do to get Lillard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty simple math equation in this. 1 + 1 is not going to equal 99. Obviously, what I mean by that, getting a star of that magnitude, you're going to have to gut your team to some degree anyway. Every team that really ends up getting a star, look at what Phoenix did when they traded for KD, right? They gave up Bridges, they gave up Cam Johnson, they gave up 2 big pieces to their team.
Pick.
Yeah, and pretty much every draft pick possible in order to get Kevin Durant from the Brooklyn Nets, which obviously now we're looking at Phoenix like they're a perennial title threat. Mm-hmm. If not this year, probably going into next year if KD decides to come back. So in Miami shoes, I like Tyler Hero. I like Jaime Jaquez a lot. I think he fits the Miami Heat culture after watching him at UCLA. That's probably a sneaky good, really good role player. And Nikola Jovic was showing out for his country during the FIBA World Cup as well. They all have a lot of potential to be good role players for your squad. And if you do want to take that route of being, we're a really good team and we have our 2 stars and Bam and Jimmy, and then the rest. I don't know how much stock I want to put into young guys to be able to carry my team or go further. You made it to the finals and you were clearly outmatched. Your roster is not going to change, and you're trying to go back in just hoping that another year of seasoning for some of those younger guys.
And they also lost a handful of guys from last year too.
Max Strus and Gabe Vincent were big pieces for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're right. So, I mean, overall, I think it's well worth the risk if you're Miami to just go ahead and pull the trigger on this thing. And you figure out the depth along the way. Free agency's over, basically. A lot of the better pieces are already off the table. One of the guys out there were holding out, 2 of the guys they were holding out hope for, actually, ended up signing to other teams that could be possible title threats. And Christian Wood, who's now a Laker, and Kelly Oubre Jr., who's now just ended up in Philly. 2 big pieces that they could have used, but both of those guys wanted to see if Dame was going to go down there. It didn't happen. They decided to take their talents elsewhere and possibly ended up in better situations currently. So
they decided not to take their talents to South Beach.
They can't say the same like LeBron, huh? But I mean, it's pretty tough, you have a big decision to make. If you're Pat Riley, do you want to gut your talent and be a title threat maybe for the next 2 to 3 years, I would say is the window. Because I mean, Jimmy Butler's not exactly a young star. Bam is probably 25 to 27-ish, if I had to
Yeah,
guess.
I mean, he's probably going to be right in his prime years. He's entering them.
Yeah, so I mean, realistically, your window is not super wide, but I mean, it's there. We can see it. It's visible. So yeah, nah, it's worth the risk of gutting your team for this, like you said, this generational player. I think a guy that's just as talented as a Steph Curry or a Kyrie Irving,
Yeah.
one of those upper echelon point guards in the league that
Yep.
would take your team to the next level.
That's the thing. You're trading for a top 3 point guard in the NBA, borderline top 3 point guard, depending on who you're talking to. And in the NBA, it's all about winning championships. Pat Riley knows this more than anybody. And you're talking about the Heat culture, having some of these guys that fit the culture. And I'm not disagreeing with you whatsoever. You bring Damian Lillard into that Heat culture, and you're immediately gonna everything changes. Like obviously in Portland, they made it to the playoffs, a few times. They made it to the Western Conference Finals once, but this is a whole new ball game now. Like Damian Lillard finally is going to be on a team where they, have championship potential, and he's never been on a team like that in his career. So you put him in a position like that, and Damian Lillard, he's hungry. He wants to win. If you put him there, I think it's going to be very dangerous. Like, as a Celtics fan, like as a Boston fan, I'm telling you, like that team would scare me. Like Damian Lillard in the playoffs is not someone you want to cross paths with. Say the same thing about Jimmy Butler. Ben Adebayo has had big moments in the playoffs as well. That could be one of the best big threes in the NBA if you put them together. I
So
don't think it's much to think about, to be honest with you.
that's my next question for you, though. Like, where would you rank them out east? Because
I
obviously,
mean, I
go for
will
it.
say, so Philly, I think they've crumbled. I take them out of the top 3 contention. I think Boston obviously is a team you have to tip your hat to. You have to put them in there. I know I'm a Boston fan, but I do think that they are in that top 3.
Of
Then you
course.
got, Milwaukee and stuff like that. They have some things going on over there that we might get into and all that. But, they have, their own, they still have their core together and all that stuff, which is great. Miami, again, they just made it to the finals and stuff like that. So I think you really have to, I think Miami might be the best team in the Eastern Conference if they get Damian Lillard. Honestly, I think that is a move that I think you have to. It's interesting because when you put a new player into a roster as well, it's kind of like a wait and see. Like it might take a little bit to put it together.
For sure.
Miami was what they were the 9 or 10 seed or whatever. They were in the play-in last season, so it's not even like they were a top seed in the East too. So they would have a depleted roster. That's understandable, but I think favorites, maybe not like regular season. Also, to me, is like some teams just don't really give a fuck during the regular season. It's all about when the playoffs come around. I think the Heat would be a top 3 favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference. Maybe I should reword that. I think
Okay.
it's like Boston, Milwaukee, and Miami, I think, are the 3 big teams that are going to be the favorites coming out of the East. When it comes to rankings, regular season and stuff like that, I mean, that's always going to move around. Injuries, breakout teams, all that stuff could happen. I feel like every year you always have like a team or two that's just like you don't expect to be a top 3 seed, but end up being, at the top of their conference.
Yeah.
But if Damian Lillard goes to the Heat, I think that they are definitely a favorite coming out of the Eastern Conference next season.
Yeah, like I think I don't mind them being like in your top 3 of your Eastern Conference teams. Hell, I would put them there. I
Mhm.
think with like a team like Cleveland hot on their heels because I'm still waiting on the rise of Evan Mobley
Right.
offensively to take that
hmm
team to the next level.
And
But
Cleveland could be a team that finishes top 3 in the Eastern Conference standings. Like last year, I was talking
for
about
sure.
a team unexpected, like the Kings. They were the number 3 seed in the West last year, but they lost in the
Yeah.
first round. So it's like to some teams, like yeah, you could fight in the regular season and get the seeding and stuff, but what
Mhm.
matters is the playoffs.
Yeah, like I think that's you hit it again. You hit it on the head. I think that's the main thing. I wouldn't have them being the best team penciled in because I still don't think they feature like a Jimmy Butler. Obviously, is a bona fide star,
Yeah,
and I don't think anybody can really question that. But I'm not going to put him over the likes of a Giannis. I don't mind
right.
putting him up against a guy like Tatum because he's came up small on the biggest stages the last
For
couple
sure,
years.
for sure.
So if you want to say that he's better than Jason Tatum or somebody wants to do that, cool. I don't mind that. That's a debate for another day. Overall, the Celtics still have a better team, even with Damian Lillard being added to it. At least that's how highly I think of Kristaps and Jaylen Brown and the rest of the supporting cast that Boston does have. Even though Malcolm Brogdon is looking like he's going to demand a trade soon, conversation for another day.
Yeah.
The depth of the team overall is still pretty damn good and a lot better than what it's going to be after Miami does decide to cripple their team to get Damian Lillard. So,
I think on paper, they're not going to be a top team for sure. It's going to come down to, I think if Miami gets Lillard, we'll just say they do. We'll just say they give up, those role players we mentioned, picks, whatever. So you have Lillard, Butler, bam. This could be a year where it's like, okay, now we have these three. Let's see how far we can go with these three and stuff like that. And hell, maybe they do make it far. Maybe they do make it back to the East Conference Finals or even the finals. Who knows? Then next year, you kind of see, okay, now we got to build around it. Kind of like with Phoenix last year. They trade for KD, at the deadline. They got him, and then they lost in the playoffs. Obviously, there were some factors that went into it, whatever. And this offseason, they revamped that team. They went out and got Bradley Beal. They brought in all these bench players, these shooters, players that could work around their big three now. And now this is the year that people are thinking the Phoenix Suns, are the favorite or one of the top favorites to win the championship. That could be like what Miami's going to be doing.
I mean, I don't mind that being the blueprint for them, right? They're getting a player like a top 10 player all time at his position potentially. And they already have one of the better clutch performers in Jimmy Butler as well, which along with Damian Lillard is pretty damn great himself in that position. Then you have an all-world defensive player in Bam, who should have been on Team USA, by the way, but all-world defensive player in Bam. So, I mean, it's your big three is set. And nowadays, or at least for the past 10 years or so, that's all super teams are really looking at. Like, do we have this semblance of our three main guys, and who could we put around them? Obviously, LeBron been in LA for the last 5 to 6 years or so. He's never really completed his super team in LA or getting that third good star, but instead he's filled it out the way with depth, right? And that's if let's say Miami doesn't happen to get Damian Lillard. If they don't, that's all they need to worry about is developing those young guys. And again, I don't even think they get back to the Eastern Conference Finals if they don't make the move, if they don't make the trade. I think beating Milwaukee in the first round was still kind of fluky. Yeah. Not having Giannis available all those games makes a big difference. And arguably that guy could be the best player in the world if you want to say he is.
Sure.
So I'm a little sketched. I think the Heat definitely need to get this shit done. Because if they don't,
they need to stop tiptoeing around this, man. I'm getting sick of this shit. And we said it, it's just get it done. If you're gonna do it, do it. If you're not, training camp starts in 2 weeks. So something's got to give eventually. If you're not gonna do it, back away from it. Damian Lillard's got to figure it out in Portland. Just let's get this drama over with. I'm sick of all this.
I get it. We've talking about it a few of these episodes so far, but also do understand the reservations of not pulling the trigger. Because again, you're going to be gutless. There's not going to be anybody else coming off your bench. Maybe the only players that I would recognize on that roster, if they're able to keep them, which they probably will, would be Haywood Highsmith, who played
Duncan Robinson too.
Maybe because the money
who can't even play in the playoffs.
I'm not quite sure what that roster is going to look like after this potential trade. So I understand Pat Riley's a smart dude, and he knows that. Now Portland's driving an even harder bargain than what they were prior to. But hey, Damian Lillard wants to get out the building. Apparently, there's even some random Eastern Conference team that they have refused to actually mention the name. That could be a suitor for Damian Lillard as well. But we've seen him be adamant that he doesn't want to play anywhere else but Miami. I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens.
We'll see what happens.